Welcome to Conversations with Laurel. Everyone, I am your host, Laurel.mchargue, and today's guest, debut author Lindsay Rice, has written a book that just might make roadies of us all. What do you think? Is that about right, Lindsay?
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Laurel, for having me on your podcast. I'm really, really excited to talk about my book, Birdenwheel.
Well,
Um,
good, because that's the first question I'm going to ask you. So, well, first of all, when I said this might make roadies of us all, this book is about the Grateful Dead. Do they still tour?
Dead and Company does a different iteration of the band.
Okay, alrighty. So, how about giving us a little elevator pitch of what our listeners and readers can find in your book?
Sure. Burden Wheel is a braided narrative. So there's five main characters, and it is set kind of in the 1990s with a little bit in the 1890s. It's one of the settings is the Grateful Dead scene of the 1990s. So a couple of the characters are on tour. They're not members of the band, they're just fans. You know, there was a big subculture in American history in the 1990s, 1960s, or the 90s when Jerry Garcia was alive, where a lot of people toured and were considered deadheads, which I was very much. So this book is covers some of the Grateful Dead scene of the 1990s, but it's also a book about music and grief and relationships and America. So
Yes.
living in America and wanting things that people want, and it's the characters are really meaningful to me. So this book is more than a Grateful Dead book.
It absolutely is, and I would say, and again, it's fiction, but I would almost say that this is literary fiction. Would you disagree with that? Did you
Um,
strive for that
yeah,
tone?
yes, I did strive for that. I did study poetry a lot when I was younger and studied creative writing at the University of Iowa. So definitely that was what I was aiming was more literary. And so it's a lot slower. It's not like a fast-paced mystery novel or anything. It's really about these, it's very character driven. So that is maybe one element of literary fiction that I
All
think I
right. Well, I got it. And if you're okay, I would like to read a passage to you from your book. Is that okay?
yeah, please.
So I just have to tell you, I loved chapter seven. My favorite character in the book is Percy. So I'm just going to read the first paragraph of chapter seven, just to give our listeners a feel for your writing. Okay?
Okay.
This is Percy, and we're in 1897. He sat on the edge of her bed and could feel the metal frame press in behind his legs. The bed covers, old and threadbare, were pulled up to her neck. He watched as sweat bubbles gathered on her forehead. He held her hand in his, and the limpness of her fingers turned his stomach like a butter churn, smashing something good down, making it greasy but unrecognizable. He would offer her butter if they had any. He would offer her new air to wipe away the sickness in her lungs. The chickens squawked in their pen 200 feet from the house. He sure as hell hoped nothing was going after them again. Oh,
Hmm. Thank you for reading that.
let me just, I read that chapter and it almost brought tears to my eyes, even just like reading it now. It's so powerful. It's so poignantly beautiful. And I mean, this is how you write. And for a debut novel, uh, kudos, Lindsay.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, okay, you've created many main characters, right? And from different time periods. My characters come to me oftentimes in dreams or people I know. Of course, I never do actual people in my stories, not yet anyway. Where did your characters from Birdenwheel appear to you? How did you find and decide to focus on the characters that you chose for this book?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll start with Percy because you just mentioned him, and he's set in the 1890s and is an ancestor of one of the other characters. And I think the impetus was, I wrote this novel after my time following the Grateful Dead. And the music is so meaningful and rich and deep and goes back, in my opinion, to other times in American history. And so I was trying to find some place in history, some way to connect the characters in the 1990s to an earlier time. And I ended up, after different, iterations of this book, landed on an Appalachian character. And knowing that the music came from, England and Ireland, traveled to Appalachia, and that's one of the influences of the rock and roll music. And so I really wanted to tie back to that. It doesn't, Percy is just kind of representative of a character who was living a hard life, 100 years ago. And um, I feel like a lot of the music touches on that or did touch on that. So I wanted a character that was in the past. That was what Percy was, how he was created. And probably he's an amalgamation of a lot of different people and ideas and, writing, reading that I've done. Um, and then the other characters, so Percy is kind of the older one, and then there is Hetty, who is his maybe his great granddaughter,
Yeah.
who's in the 90s, and she's living alone in a cabin. I lived alone in a cabin in northern New Mexico, and so that setting really helped me create her character. Um, and she's just kind of like an old woman who's a little stubborn and trying to get has had a very full life and is just kind of um, trying to come to terms with her life in her older age. Um, and she's the grandmother of, so these generations kind of go down. She's the grandmother of Rowan, who's the younger character who is on tour with the Dead. And he came from, several people that I knew in my life. Characters tend to do that. They tend to be like a representation of lots of different people that come together. You pick one characteristic, another characteristic, another characteristic. So that's how Rowan came to be. Cass was a little bit more autobiographical than any of them. Just a young,
That was my question. I was going to say, is are you her? But go
to
ahead.
some degree, but not entirely.
Okay.
Some of my friends are in her too. Um, and then Devin is more of he's a combination of a lot of characters as well. And one of them is my late stepbrother, and just like kind of a hard scrabble. He didn't go to prison, but rode motorcycles and was kind of hard living. And so a lot of the characteristics of Devin are from my late step brother Mark. So
Okay.
lots
All
of
right.
different people that came together and helped create these characters.
All right. I mean, that's it's amazing, and it's amazing how they all kind of, as you said, braid. It's a braided story, which you cannot be a pantser, right? You could not have written this by the seat of your pants. You had to have planned this. It is, I can't imagine that you didn't. So what was your process for putting this all together?
It's a long time in the coming, and um, I've worked on it in bits and pieces. And I realized, sometimes when I created a certain outline for the story, it changed, and over the years, it changed a lot. But one of the pieces that I was trying to do as an outline for forming the book was the Grateful Dead concerts, and so this does cover like a summer tour for some of the characters, and then kind of placing them in the dead scene or knowing that they were going there or going to visit the other characters. That kind of was a bit of a placeholder for them. I followed the Grateful Dead from 91 to 94. So that time period is what I knew. And the characters kind of go in and out of that, but then they enter the scene in different ways. Um, so that was kind of the outline process. I did a lot of character studies too and wrote character sketches for them. So I feel really connected to these characters. I feel like I know them pretty well, and that's kind of neat.
Yes, and they're all unique and they speak differently and all the things that you want in characters. And they all have their own baggage and all that. Are you a quilter?
I'm not, but I have taken some quilting classes, and I'm so fascinated by quilting and quilts. So I wanted,
Tell us about the quilt. Why is that in here?
um, I think it's, I mean, I've been a jewelry artist for a lot of
Okay.
time.
Okay.
So art is important to me. I'm teaching myself how to do watercolors. So, but the color and the patterns that you find in quilt are very part of the structure, right? And they create kind of a mandala. I'm very into, sacred art too.
I see that
So
behind you. Yeah.
yeah, that's Tara Buddha. Um, but yeah, so the sacredness and the structure and the beauty and pattern in quilts, I really appreciate. I've taken, one or two quilting classes, and just it's a lot harder to do than appreciate. Um, but yeah, I think it's this just the color and the patterns, and that it's also something that can keep you warm. There's more to it, and there's a long tradition in Native culture of quilting, and I wanted to kind of touch on that as well.
Yeah, you did. And even the idea of the quilt, of bringing together so many different patches to create one beautiful thing, which is what you did with your debut novel. I mean, come on. Wow. So, Lindsay Rice, some of your chapters you begin with quotations. Not all of them, just some of them. Why did you make that decision?
Well, you know, a lot of the influence was the Grateful Dead lyrics. I have my
Okay.
Grateful Dead lyrics book. However, when one is publishing a book, putting lyrics in it is very expensive to a
Yeah.
publisher. So I
Yes.
really early on, I was like, no, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. How am I going to convey the lyrics? And what I did, and this is a big part of my process too, was in there, I consider them kind of like Easter eggs because they're not everywhere in the book. They're in
Right.
some chapters. And they're just little short ones, like, for instance, in chapter 5, Devon, at the beginning of Devon's chapter, it says, I'm working to fix up mine and stay out of the slammer. Each day I get up and think it's going to get easier. If you were a deadhead and you knew about this lyric, it hints at another song. It hints at a song. And so I'm trying to remember the exact lyric that it hints at,
That's
but
okay. Maybe you shouldn't even say them because we don't want to
I
get in
know.
trouble.
Yeah. But so my reason for doing that was to try to capture a song that represents this chapter or represents this character, and do it in a way that isn't using the words, but I even kind of worked with the syllables of, the poem to try to mimic the song. And that's
Yeah.
what writing instructors had told me. Other writers said, this is what you can do. You can either quote the name of the song unless it's in the public domain. Like, there are a couple that I put in here because I know that they are in the public domain, so it's allowed. But the ones that aren't, that were written by Robert Hunter or John Barlow, I wanted to still capture that, and pay homage to them, really. The book is dedicated to Robert Hunter, who was a great poet. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of what those little Easter eggs are, is just a hinting at a Grateful Dead song.
Okay. All right. So, Grateful Dead. What was it? What is it still about them and their lyrics that captured you? I mean, captured you, really. And maybe still have you captured?
Yeah, yeah.
What is it about them? You spoke a little bit about that earlier, but yeah.
I think that there's songs to live with and to live by. And you know, us I study poetry to begin with. So I love poetry because it's so open, and it's so open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Is one, idea that the poet might have intended, and sometimes that comes across crystal clear, and sometimes it comes across in many different ways. And sometimes a person can pull out a line that really is meaningful to them in that particular moment of their life. And I feel like the Grateful Dead songs um, allow that. They're there for the people. And I think that's what the intention was with the band to some degree because they allowed people to tape the shows. And that was a
Uh,
big part of the underground of the music was how they were playing it, what the lyrics said. But even to me, in high school and whenever I went to a show, hearing some part of this lyric was like, it just reached into my soul like a mantra in some way. And I think that ability of the Grateful Dead music is what makes it so special, and why people grasp onto it. So a friend of mine wrote a review of Birdenwheel, and she was saying, people can really relate to this if they're going out into the world trying to find their place and their people. And I was like, yep, that's exactly right, Kate. Because that's what I was doing, when I was a young high school student, wanting to get into the world and break out of my small Kansas City life. And so the Grateful Dead and the music and the concerts were a bit of a vehicle for me. So yes, people might want to become a roadie because uh, yeah.
did you scare your family? I mean,
Oh
was this
yeah. Oh yeah. Poor mom. At least something came out of it now. I wrote a book about it.
right, right? I mean, when I decided to leave Smith College and go to West Point, I scared my mom.
Oh,
So I
I
I
was
totally
way
understand.
past that. No.
I understand being a little bit of a rebel.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you said that this has been a long time in the making. I was going to ask why now? Why have you written the book now? Is it just that you were ready now, or because you were ready a long time ago? Did you
Um,
know? Did you know back then that you were going to write a book about it? I
Yeah,
wonder.
I kind of had an epiphany coming back from a Jerry Garcia band show in Reno, Nevada. I was probably on a lot of drugs, but I was driving up the mountain, I remember. I had this like people have, metaphysical visions on LSD or what have you.
Yeah.
And I saw Jerry Garcia with his big white hair as this white buffalo, and I was like, I was okay. It was fine. I was with people, we were safe. But driving back up to Lake Tahoe from Reno, I just said, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book about this, So I knew from early on, I didn't get to start writing it for I don't know, 3 to 5 years after that. And then I didn't get to start working on it till 10 years after. I mean, this book is really it. I'm putting it out there now because it's time and I don't want it to sit in a drawer. It's not, I need it to be in the world. That's been my intention. And at some point, you just got to let it go into the world. So that's why
Yes.
it's out there now.
Yeah. You mentioned feeling safe. Did you ever not feel safe on the road?
Sure. Um, I mean, I was traveling with, this is not totally biographical. This is not necessarily in the novel. This is just my
Yeah.
journey. But
Yeah.
I traveled with a group of people who were seasoned deadheads. So they kind of knew what was up. And I was under their protection. And that was good. I remember one time we were in Boston, which was pretty rough, and our van got stolen. And we'd show up at the police station. We weren't that excited to go to the police station, um, but getting our van back from some crackheads was not comfortable. That was
Yeah.
really not comfortable. And other than that, like the Grateful Dead scene, I don't know if it really exists so much these days. It feels like a different time, but there's a lot of stuff that would go on in a Grateful Dead show, or even in the parking lot or outside. But there was a community of people who really looked out for each other and really knew that, okay, this person needs this person needs this. It was a real communal sense. And as long as you didn't step on people's toes. I mean, that's one of the things that I wanted to capture in Burden Wheel was all the different groups of
Yeah,
people
yeah.
that followed the dead. They weren't, it wasn't all hippies. It wasn't, it was such a uh,
Diverse group.
combination.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, but there was a unifying force in the music and what we were all wanting to find there, what we were seeking. And so I feel like there was a safety net as part of it that maybe isn't everywhere where there's a group of people coming together for a concert.
Yeah,
So,
that
yeah,
was one thing I
go
was going to ask you is if, are there any groups you would follow today or
ahead. I love music. I love music and I seek out music, but I'm not big on crowds anymore. I live
Yeah.
in a small mountain town and I'm happy to not be around people. You know, that's kind of, I'm a little bit more like Hetty now, where I want to be alone. So, and I've traveled, I've done a lot of stuff in my life. I've really been out there. So I don't feel the need to do that. And I'm not as, um, I don't feel like it's as safe.
So you don't mourn the loss of that lifestyle.
Not so much. My life is different now, and that's part of the reason of why I wanted to release it into the world, because it's like, okay, I am completing that part of my journey, and I'm ready for something else. I don't know what it is, but there's other work that I need to get to.
Okay. Okay. I love that. I'm gonna read something else because
Please.
again, this is another Percy chapter,
Okay.
kind of near the end. And just to give you again a feel for your writing, Percy replayed his day and night and the gone space of Molly. Yet he felt this was here too, the low bowl of hills, the empty morning, the sound of Appalachia at dawn. I have goosebumps. I have goosebumps. Lindsay Rice, what words of advice would you give to aspiring authors now that you are one? Not an aspiring one, you are one.
Um, keep writing, keep writing, just keep writing and writing and writing. Oftentimes, like you end up with so much more than you will use. Um, and a phrase that comes back to me from several writing workshops, kill your little darlings. So if you have phrases that you love to death, they need to go. Uh, the Burden Wheel in this iteration right now, this book, it probably could be shorter. It probably could be like I had publishers who were like, oh, yeah, I can publish it if it's 90,000 words. And I'm like, I don't want to slash my characters. I don't want to slash some of this stuff. I was too attached to it. Um, but it's still, I have so many more pages that I've written that are not published in this book, so writing and don't edit to begin with, spend some years writing and let it be and let it sit and then come back to it. Um, yeah, and have faith in what you have to say and be descriptive and yeah, use the five senses.
You mentioned workshops.
Yeah.
I met you, by the way, in Chafee, I keep wanting to call it the old name, Central Colorado Writers Group.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure you have used their critique groups.
A little bit, yes.
Okay.
I used a lot of critique groups so a lot of this was written when I was a student at University of Iowa.
Okay.
So I was under the creative writing track that kind of led from the writer's workshop there. And so a lot of this book was kind of polished and perfected and what I call flashed in here, in that I could spend so many more hours with my characters navel gazing.
Yeah.
And then you don't have a so I worked on creating plot there, and I did a lot of writing workshops at the University of Iowa. Also at Big Sur writing workshop, other summer workshops at the University of Iowa, and I work with a developmental editor, Linda Rodriguez, who's in Kansas City, and she kind of helped me directly on it. So there was a lot of workshopping on this book.
What's your advice for accepting criticism?
Um, Take a lot of it and and see what sticks, because some person might have one view, another person might have another view, and then you have to see, okay, two people maybe thought this, so I'm going to take that advice. Or, in the latest editing process that I did, a couple of friends read the book and they gave me specific feedback, and I implemented those as, oh, that's actually a really good idea. I added the image at the beginning just to keep the characters straight because there's a lot of them. And that was a good piece of advice. So yeah, I think taking advice from people it's part of the process. It's definitely part of the process.
Yeah, you cannot have thin skin,
No.
writers out there, because once you launch your book, right, Lindsay, once you launch it, it's not yours anymore. It's mine. It's mine, and I get to decide what I feel about it, right? And but yeah, you'll take advice, take criticism, and then cull it, right? I mean, ultimately, you as the author get to decide what stays and what goes and what needs to be changed or not, because you're the artist. Yeah. So, Lindsay Rice, what are you working on now in the writing world?
I have some big poems that I really want to work on. Um, I'm calling them bigger poems because they have deeper meanings than some things. I also have a whole collection of poetry that's based on uh, horses or the concept of horses.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a collection I'd like to return to. But just like some bigger poems and also just getting back into poetry because that's my first love.
And you talk about art. When you publish your poetry book, will you illustrate it yourself somehow?
No.
No?
I mean, I don't
Maybe?
know. Maybe. I'm just learning about watercolors. I have an artist in mind who's an amazing artist of horses in Santa Fe, and I might try to see if I can get her involved.
Okay, all right.
I'm just ready to just sit with Birdenwheel for a while and see and share it and really try to get it out into the world.
And speaking of that, you have a book launch party coming up. Talk
Yeah,
about that.
I'm very excited for my book launch party. It is going to be on Saturday, May 31st, here in Salida, Colorado. And there's a small club called the Velveteen. A couple friends of mine own that club, and there's going to be a reading from 6 to 7. And then from 7 to 10, there's going to be the Grateful Dead cover band Roundhouse Assembly, who is wonderful. And I really wanted to recreate kind of the Grateful Dead scene. So we're going to have grilled cheese sandwiches. We're going to have drinks that have song names. We're going to have a little mini shakedown street, which is the place at the Grateful Dead shows where people sold stuff, beer, grilled cheese, art, jewelry. I have a jewelry artist he is from I'm spacing the name of the town.
Somewhere. He's from somewhere.
Telluride. He's in Telluride, and he's a jewelry artist. He's very good. And he's coming here. He's going to set up there. And Juniper Gifts has some Grateful Dead themed gifts, and they're going to sell them
Yes.
at the party. So yeah, I'm trying to get a bunch of people to come out and have a good time and throw a party for Birdenwheel. This
Right.
book deserves a little bit of a celebration in my book. In my book. So
In my book. No pun intended.
yeah,
Uh,
so I'm really looking forward to sharing it. And thank you for connecting with Percy. He's kind of a
yeah.
smaller character in the book, but he's very meaningful to me. So I appreciate you kind of bringing him to light
He
here.
was favorite. What can I say?
I like that.
Listeners out there, our author today is Lindsay Rice. This is her debut novel, Bird and Wheel. I will have links below to her book. And how do you want people to contact you or follow you?
Burdenwheel.com.
Okay. All right. Well, that's easy enough.
And
Again, I'll have
all
a
of my other socials, I have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I'm making TikToks, and it's all under Burden Wheel, Birdenwheel.
Get the book right now. Lindsay Rice, thank you so much for spending time with me today, for informing me on a world that I have not been involved in really. You know, when you join the army, you can't really do that. I don't think you could do that anyway. Um, Listeners out there, if there's a conversation you'd like to have with me, email me. I'll have my email address below. And Lindsay, I will give you advice that my mother always gave me when I was going off to do crazy things like jump out of airplanes and stuff. Be good. And if you can't be good, be careful.
Right. That's a good one.
All right. We'll see you around town, Lindsay, and congratulations on your book. And I look forward to reading your poetry book whenever that's published. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.